All right, hello and welcome. We are going to be going over today, Friday, asynchronously, a multiple choice section. I'm going to go over a couple different things as far as the things you should look out for, and a couple strategies of how to take tests well. And so, ultimately, there's a couple things I want to talk about. I was looking through the data of how we filled out the test, and almost 95% of us went in order. That's not necessarily a good strategy when it comes to the AP test because the AP test will be 4 or 5 sections, and it will be a variety of different levels. Some of them are going to be easier readings, some of them are going to be more difficult, but you are only counted on the ones that you get correct. And so if you spend a lot of time working through a difficult reading, you don't get any more points than you would have for a relatively easy reading that you could have completed. And so one thing I want you to keep in mind is that you should be finishing the easier sections first. And so do not skip ahead to the hard ones. You don't get any extra points. If you see 3 easy ones and 1 hard one, leave that hard one for last, because if you're going to end up guessing, you might as well guess on that one. And so, and by the way, there's no penalty for guessing. That was another question that came in that I emailed out the answer to individually, but there's no penalty for guessing. So you get stuck at the end, guess away. Okay, so with that said, you want to make sure that you take a second or a minute in the beginning to read over the difficulties, in terms of how difficult each reading is, things that you should take into account. If they give you a time period, if you see a subject, if you're able to kind of parse out like what this is about. So I would look over like maybe the first sentence and see if the vocabulary is a little more old school, or if it's something that's modern. Modern is generally going to be easier, and obviously a subject you're familiar with is going to be a lot easier than when you're not. So with that in mind, make sure you look over the readings first, choose the easiest and move from easiest to most difficult. And then we're going to talk today about eliminating answers. And so that's really what we're going to focus on. But you should be looking through and reading carefully. I know a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, I just kind of skimmed it. This is not the test that skimming works out well. This is the kind of test where, I know obviously if you're running out of time at the end, skim, do your best. But if you have time, and right now we've got a lot of time to get ready for this test, it's best to fully understand the reading, because that's going to give you that level of certainty on those answers. Because oftentimes there'll be a good answer and a bad answer, or a good answer and the correct answer. And so we'll definitely talk about what that looks like when we get to eliminating answers. But with that said, we'll jump right into it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to model exactly what I would be thinking the first time that I was reading this passage, so you can see exactly how I would deal with things. You can see that third line, the word coquette. I didn't know what that meant, and that's okay. It's just a matter of using context clues usually to figure things out. And so I'm going to read through. I'm going to stop, talk about some things along the way, but ultimately just trying to model how my thinking is alongside this. And so please watch this video and then answer the questions. You're going to fill out that document at the end with the answers that you think it is, and then we'll go over them and review. So with that, don't know anything about this reading. Although my early life tended to encourage my flirting propensities, it did not make me the real heartless coquette I afterwards became. And so I'm seeing the words like flirting propensities. So this is possibly a romantic reading. The heartless coquette. I don't know what a coquette is, but I do know what heartless is. And so apparently somebody used to flirt, and then they became heartless afterwards. And so don't get thrown off by words you don't know. The flirtations of school life were harmless, for there was no real love between myself and the parties concerned. When I left school, I was just 17, young, gay, rich, happy, thoughtless, without a wish ungratified. I had become accustomed to admiration all my life, and now I really deserved it. I was rather stylish in my personal appearance, so everyone said. Every advantage that money could give had been given to me, and I do not flatter myself when I say I improved my talents. I rode well, danced well, played and sang well, conversed well, and in truth, everything I attempted, I did well. All right, so this person is obviously full of themselves. They think very highly of themselves. They come from money, and there are things there along the way. They're young, but they don't really care about the people that they're dating because there's no real love. It says, and ultimately, it seems like whoever this person is, they are once again, they think very highly of themselves. And so, but they do admit in the early part that they're going to become heartless at some point. So this is all just good information to take in. You'll see I'm trying to literally context build, because oftentimes you won't get any of the information about the reading. And so context building becomes very important. And so as much information as I can get, I'm kind of extrapolating and trying to find out more things. And so among the first satellites that moved around my sphere, and so they're very hyperbolic here. You know, they're a planet, and there's a satellite moving around them, and so they're talking about this two young gentlemen. And so among the first satellites that moved around my sphere were two young gentlemen, both handsome but very unlike in personal appearance and disposition. One was dark as a Spaniard, with eyes and hair as dark as night, when the moon and stars have hid their beams under a canopy cloud. Somebody with dark eyes, dark hair. He was very handsome and talented, yet I could not love the man, for I feared him. Still, it amused me to lead him on, intending to tell him every time we met that his love was vain, but I continued putting it off. And so this person is leading this guy along, and it doesn't seem like it is going to end well there. The other, God knows I loved him. If women is capable of love. He was fair, very dark, and dark eyes and light hair. His mouth was beautiful, but deceit lurked in every exquisite curve of his lips. And Adonis was not more perfect in form, and he knew it. He was young in years, yet old in sin. This is called coded language here. Young in years, old in sin. That means he's getting a little sinful. People are getting into things that maybe they think they shouldn't. And so she is obviously very taken with this young gentleman. I now sometimes think that he, like Bulwer's Zanoni, had found the truth, or the true secret of perpetual youth, and that he had lived for centuries. So well was he versed in the ways of the world and in each phase of human nature. He often boasted of the many conquests he had made, and said that no woman he chose to captivate could escape loving him. And so she's very full of herself. He's obviously very full of himself as well. If he's boasting of these conquests or the women he's made fall in love with him. I did not like this speech, but I loved him. And so, okay, so she doesn't like what he's saying, but she still loves him. He had certainly many rare traits of character. His generosity was proverbial. He was a warm friend and had the most perfect control over his very high temper. It was not long before we became engaged. He said that he loved me at first sight, and God knows that his love was more than returned. And so she's saying she's really, really into this guy, just in a little hyperbolic way here. He called to see me each day, and every night escorted me to some place of amusement. He was very jealous, but I liked that. He was my sun during the day and my moon at night. Okay, so this is going on for quite a while. She's going way out of her way to make sure that we understand exactly how much she cared for this guy. And so ultimately, it's getting a little long-winded here, but you get the point. He was my sun during the day, moon at night. There was a cloud over all my happiness when he failed to come. He was young, ardent, fiery, passionate, and I was a fool. The passionate devotion of my heart was lavished upon a worthless object. I knew nothing of his former conduct or character, as he had come to Macon but recently. And so I was a fool. This stands out to me because it's all this long, flowery language. And then we actually get this like break in punctuation syntax you remember from this week. And it stands out because it's a short clause. And so just recently got to the place, important to know. Knowing how particular my father was about such things, I employed a friend to visit the town he was from and inquire into his past history. Now, friends, bear pity with my sad trial, and paint to your own imaginations how you would feel in such a case. Within 2 years of marriage, with a man that you loved with your whole heart and soul, a perfect man as you thought, imagine how you would feel to hear that he had. Oh God, how can I relate such a truth as I heard? But I must, or you will never hear the charity my quotations. And so charity there kind of meaning like you won't, once again, like understand or feel for the things that I've gone through. That he had compelled to leave the town in which he lived on account of his base seduction of a most beautiful but poor girl under solemn promise of marriage. And so he apparently has seduced this other girl who was very beautiful but poor, promised her marriage, and apparently left ahead of time. Let's see as it goes on. He lived as a husband with her for a few months and then deserted her. leaving her to die alone in ignominy and the most abject poverty. And so, okay, so he's left somebody, leaving her to die alone. I don't know what ignominy means, but that's okay once again, because I'm using context clues. He's not a good guy. He's done all of these things, leaving this woman on her deathbed. On her deathbed, she divulged her secret to her brother, who traced the seducer to the city and wounded him in a duel and was fatally shot himself. A seducer and a double murderer, the man I thought free from guile. And once again, even if I don't know what guile is, he's free from probably like sin as an angel in heaven. It was enough to drive one mad, and I'm sure I was crazed for years. And so she's been lied to. This person kind of married her under false pretenses, not telling her who he really was. And so you can see not such a good person after all. Now, at this point in the reading, you kind of get the gist of where this is going. And once you have a great solid grasp on like the style and exactly how it's being used, you can then begin to kind of like push ahead and maybe skim a little bit more. But it's good to make sure that once again, you have that like firm grasp of this is exactly what this is about before you start to do that. So we'll move a little bit faster. He came to see me that night. How my hand trembles. I can scarcely write to describe our meeting. I was sitting alone, for I had refused to receive visitors that night when he entered the room. Ah, darling, he said, kissing me. Alone, I see. I am very glad too, for I wanted to see you with no one near. How handsome he looked with his flushed cheeks, red from his ride in the wintry wind. What's the matter with my bird tonight? Her voice was as sweet as ever, but it is sad to me. Ella, do let me urge you to appoint our wedding day a week sooner, for you are so pretty and sweet, you will tempt me to. He did not finish the sentence, but I understood his meaning too well. And so obviously we're referring here to a situation where he wants to get married sooner, and you can probably guess at why he might want to get married a week sooner. It was the first time he had acted in such a singular manner, and I saw he was excited highly by spirituous liquors, and so or liquors. He's here drunk, and he's like, "Oh, baby, come on, let's get married sooner." Once again, she's not painting him in this like most positive light. Indeed, sir, I answered. If I've heard the truth, I am not the first woman who proved too sweet and pretty for you, and in whose presence you could not control your passions. Who told you that, Ella? He exclaimed, starting from his seat. By all that is sacred. If I find out, he shall live not an hour. You shall never know, said I. 2 murders are quite enough to doom your blackened soul, Dudley Earl. How pale he looked, but not with penitence. So he wasn't, penitence is one of those words that you kind of learn typically through like a religious setting, but it means to feel bad for what you've done. It was anger. Only toward the person who had divulged his secret. He remained an hour trying to persuade me to revoke my decision, and then left me a heartbroken, sad woman without an object in life. And then and there, I bent my knee before the throne of God. I know now it was blasphemy, but I was crazed then, and I vowed to revenge upon myself, I vowed to revenge myself upon the whole sex for the misery of one. I then supposed the type of species he had wrought in my soul, and faithfully I kept that vow. And so when she says something like, I vowed to revenge myself upon the whole sex, she's been wronged by one guy, and every guy from here to four is going to feel her wrath because of it. And so I guess we were correct about that guess about what a heartless coquette meant. It probably means somebody who is, scornful towards, in this case, it's a woman who's scornful towards men. And so ultimately, let's continue on here. The devil aids his own, and he surely helped me, even unsought. Men would lay their love at my feet, and their foibles rendered harmless by my own self-control became my playthings. And so she's playing people just like she was once played. Very often have I acted in such a way that I knew I would inflame an even unimpressible man, and then would send his love back ungratified to corrode his very heart. And so she's literally like, even the guy who's not impressed by anybody, she's going to impress him and then, deny him. Was that just or right? No, indeed, it was not. It was dangerous to me and outrageous to others. But, dear reader, in the pity of my anguish and for the long years of intense mental suffering, forgive me. Never, believe me, would I divulge this passage of my life to anyone, did I not think that perhaps it may be a warning to the young of both sexes. Okay, and so we're actually getting to the point of it here. It seems like she is trying to tell people not to do what she did. So here's this long story. I hurt other people because I was hurt. And the young people of both sexes, men and women here in this case, don't do the same thing. And so that's right here, line 148 is where it kind of is revealed. Let the young gentleman always think and know that no matter how secret an evil act may be committed, it will always come to light. And at the very time you may wish it to be kept concealed, to the girls, no matter, my dears, how handsome or fascinating a gentleman may appear, never allow your affections to become fixed on any human being until you know that being worthy. And so, guys, don't do bad stuff. And ladies, don't think that your entire worth is wrapped up in your relationship. Obviously, this is an older, you can see it's 1958 right here, Confessions of a Flirt. And so it's a little bit, kind of boxed in terms of the language here and who she's giving the advice to. But I think, once again, this is more or less her time that she was living in and who she was speaking to. And so with that in mind, continuing on, oftentimes the veriest serpent who wears a shiny coat, most beautiful to look upon, but the poison of whose fangs will corrupt a young heart and mar its peace a whole lifetime. And so ultimately, got a good understanding of it. We're giving this advice to young people about how to be in relationships. That took a little bit of time to do. But once again, if you invest the time in the reading, it'll become a lot easier when you actually get to the questions. So we're going to go over a couple of these questions together, and then the rest you're going to do on your own. So this passage can be best described as a process narrative that provides the background of a flirtatious young woman. Now, it's kind of a process narrative, and it does give the background, but I don't think that's the point of it. And so I'm not going to cross off, but I'm not going to think that's like the absolute answer either. Let's move to B. A personal narrative that shows the development of a flirtatious nature. Sure. Once again, it kind of fits. You know what I mean? It is this kind of personal narrative of hers that does fit a flirtatious nature. But once again, we're looking for the best answer, not just like something that fits. Oftentimes people will be like, oh, it was A, and then they'll move on. That wasn't necessarily it. C, cause and effect essay that explains some unladylike behavior. Okay, so is this more process? Is this more personal narrative? Or is this more cause and effect? You can kind of see how the questions are broken out here, where it's literally like, this is the form of the writing. Is it process, or is it personal, or is it cause and effect? I'm seeing a little cause and effect in terms of how like she was affected. So this does fit as well. And so you're looking at, you're like, is it A? Is it B? Is it C? I don't know. They're all good. And that's sometimes the problem with these tests. But there should be one that's a best fit, and that's the one we're looking for. And so D, an argument that justifies personal revenge. She's actually not arguing for personal revenge at all. She's saying she did wrong and trying to warn people. And so D, I can 100% cross off. It is not D. I know that. And E, a comparison of two very handsome but very different young gentlemen. That's not the point of this. That is a part of what happened, but that's not the point. So I can cross off E. So we go back and we look at A, B, and C. And so in this way, we're kind of narrowing it down to the ones that we think it's best. And by the way, if you get down to 2, you got a 50-50 chance. And if you get a 50% on the multiple choice, you're setting yourself up to pass the test. Believe it or not, 50%, half right, multiple choice will get you a passing grade if you write just even like decent essays. And so something to keep in mind. A narrative that provides the background. It's not really about her background. As I'm looking at the other ones, it's not really background information. So I'm going to cross off A. I mean, it is background, but it's not like, that's not the point of it. Is the point a personal narrative, or is the point a cause and effect essay that explains unladylike behavior? I would say that we are looking at a personal narrative, but of course there is a lot of cause and effect there. Is it showing the development of her flirtatious nature? I think it is. I think it's more so probably that narrative about her life that we're learning from, and how she became this flirtatious person that hurt people. And so I think it's probably B is my best guess at the answer. And C, cause and effect that explains unladylike. It is cause and effect, but it's not cause and effect to explain unladylike behavior. It's more like cause and effect to explain how she hurt people. And so sometimes you got to get to that like nitty gritty answer. And so in this case, put 1 as B, and we'll check that in a second. So number 2, the narrator can best be described as Indulgent but sensitive, or indulged but sensitive. Well, definitely indulged. They think they're great and everything, but sensitive, maybe. Revengeful but trustworthy, maybe. And the key with these type of questions is that you have to have both of them. And so, A, I'm not sold with. B, I'm not sold with. Angry but personable. Vindictive but personable. Spoiled but generous spirited. Um, hmm. And so all of these, there's not one that jumps out as like both of these were obviously correct. And so we're gonna have to look for like the best fit in them. Indulged but sensitive. I wouldn't say she's like sensitive necessarily. And so I think I'm gonna cross off A there. Revengeful but trustworthy. She actually proves herself to be not trustworthy. She's just giving us a warning. So trustworthy, I think we're gonna, she talked about how she purposefully corroded other people's hearts, and she kind of asked for forgiveness. So I don't think trustworthy fits, and so we're going to put that out. Angry but personable. She's definitely personable, and at points she is angry. So I'm going to leave C on the board here. Vindictive but personable. Once again, she's personal. She doesn't really come off as vindictive because like she feels bad for what she's done, and so vindictive is kind of like evil through and through, no remorse. So I'm going to cross off D. Spoiled but generous spirited. She's not necessarily, I mean, she is spoiled. She has a lot of money and stuff like that. But generous spirited, that was where she was at one point in her life. And so I think angry but personable, C is probably our best fit. And so that's what we're going to stick with. And so just like that process of elimination, what I want you to do is to go through and answer 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, all the way up through 14. So you're going to answer 14 on your own. And then I will be posting a separate answer sheet. Please do not look at the answers until you've given this a try. But it's one of those things where I'm going to post it. I can't stop you from looking at the answers, but once again, you're not really getting the practice unless you check those first. And so the point of it is for it to be difficult, and you won't have the answers posted on the real test. So make sure you're using this time well. And so with that, really quickly, I'm going to check and see how we did with this one. Answers are always provided. So we'll flip to the answer sheets, answers and explanations. And yep, we are correct. So B and C, we are correct with those. And 1 and 2 are correct. Check and see if you can get 3 through 14 on your own. So good luck. And have a good rest of your Friday.